Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're diving into something incredibly fascinating, the layered, totally complex history of the Kurdish people. If you've only ever heard about the Kurds through recent news headlines, you'd probably just see them through the strict lens of modern geopolitics. But honestly, the truth is so much richer than that. We're going to pull back the curtain today. We're looking at the history, the culture, and the heritage of a people whose story is literally a living mosaic. It's this incredible tapestry woven through centuries of interaction, adaptation, and just raw survival on the edges of some of history's greatest empires.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today's journey. First, who are the Kurds? Then, the geography of a borderland, followed by memory, myth, and Medes. After that, we'll look at Saladin's complex legacy, and finally wrap up with the Age of Emirates.
So, Section 1. Who are the Kurds?
Defining Kurdish identity? It's a massive, brilliantly complex puzzle. So, who exactly are the Kurds? I'm posing this question right up front because, honestly, it's pretty deceptive. If you dig into early medieval Arab and Persian sources, the word Kurd didn't even mean a strict ethnic group like we think of it today. Outsiders actually used the term super loosely. It was more of a catch-all for various nomadic or semi-nomadic groups hanging out in the mountainous fringes between empires. It was almost kind of like a social or occupational tag. But over centuries, through endless historical shifts and changing borders, it gradually evolved into a much more specific cultural and ethnic identity. Though, as we'll see, it still completely defies any single simple definition. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the Kurdish voice isn't a monolith at all. It's this gorgeous tapestry of distinct, overlapping northwestern Iranian languages. You've got Kurmanji, which is the most widely spoken, stretching all across Turkey, Syria, and northern parts of Iraq and Iran. And then there's Sorani, which really dominates the Kurdistan region of Iraq and western Iran, and it boasts its own incredibly rich literary tradition. Plus, we absolutely can't forget Southern Kurdish, or Zazaki or Gorani, all of which bring their own unique histories and debates to the table. Basically, a single language absolutely does not define the Kurdish people.
And just like language, religion completely defies a single narrative here. The Kurdish world covers a massive spectrum of belief. Sure, the great majority of Kurds identify as Sunni Muslims, specifically following the Shafi'i school. But that majority conceals a wildly vibrant array of minority faiths. We're talking Shia Muslim Kurds, deeply rooted Yazidi communities who have this amazing distinct oral theology, Alevi Kurds with their sacred lineages, and the Yarsanis. And for centuries, all these groups lived right alongside Armenian and Assyrian Christians, not to mention thriving Jewish communities. It's literally a mosaic of faith, entirely shaped by the mountains and valleys they call home.
Moving right along to Section 2, Geography of a Borderland. Let's look at how this physical landscape actually shaped all that incredible diversity.
You've probably heard the term Kurdistan in the news, but where does that word actually come from? Geographically and historically, its meaning has shifted a ton. The very first clear, official use of the word dates all the way back to the 12th century. That's when the Seljuk Sultan Sanjar created a specific administrative province and called it Kurdistan. But those borders were super limited. They looked nothing like the modern map. Over centuries of intense rivalry between the Ottomans and the Persians, the whole concept evolved. It transformed from a strict medieval zone into this broader, fluid, and fiercely contested borderland. It basically became a cultural and poetic ideal, carrying all these deep memories of home, longing, and belonging.
And wow, what a landscape it is. We are talking about the rugged, snow-capped Zagros and Taurus Mountains rolling right down into the super fertile plains of the Jazeera, all of it carved up by the mighty Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Historically, these massive peaks and deep valleys acted like brilliant natural fortresses. They were this huge barrier to invading empires. But at the exact same time, they acted as a protective cradle, allowing autonomous local cultures to just thrive. Today, of course, this historic heartland is divided up among 4 modern states: Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria, which obviously has a profound impact on the Kurdish experience today.
Section 3. Memory, Myth, and Mighties. Let's move to this and see how it builds into the whole ancient origin debate.
Okay, so when we explore ancient origins, we run into this totally fascinating dynamic. On one hand, Kurdish collective memory holds powerfully onto this idea of direct descent from the ancient Median Empire. This was a massive power back in the 7th century BCE. For a lot of Kurds, the Medes are this ultimate symbol of ancient roots and immense ancestral pride. But if you ask modern historians, they'll tell you there is no proven unbroken lineage connecting the Medes straight to modern Kurds. What they do share, however, are northwestern Iranian linguistic roots. So we have to look at this neutrally, right? That cultural memory is incredibly potent and absolutely valid as a pillar of identity, even if the strict scholarly evidence points more toward a gradual blending of tons of different highland peoples over time.
And honestly, this highlights a really crucial historical principle. You just can't retroactively apply modern concepts of ethnic identity to ancient empires. The ancient world, they simply didn't categorize people the way we do today. Trying to pinpoint one single pure ancient ancestor kind of misses the beautiful reality of the whole situation. Kurdish history isn't just some straight, unbroken line. It is this magnificent, messy story of continuous adaptation, migration, intermingling, and integration over thousands of years. It's all about how these mountain societies survived and evolved through wave after wave of empires.
Section 4. Saladin's Complex Legacy. Let's fast forward a bit into the Islamic era and meet one of the most famous figures in this history.
So, following the Arab-Muslim conquests back in the 7th century, the Kurdish highlands went through this very gradual, kind of uneven process of Islamization. Now, as the central power of the Abbasid Caliphate started to fade, local Kurdish dynasties began popping up in the mountains and plains. This new decentralized vibe perfectly set the stage for the Ayyubid era. Fast forward to 1171, and you have Saladin, a man of Kurdish ancestry from Tikrit, taking power in Egypt and completely dismantling the Fatimid Caliphate. By 1187, his forces pull off this massive victory at the Battle of Hattin, which ultimately leads to recapturing Jerusalem from the Crusaders. Pretty huge deal.
Today, Saladin is understandably a colossal figure of Kurdish pride. But his identity and his actual legacy, they're pretty complex. Yes, absolutely, he had Kurdish ancestry, and he loved appointing his extended family to top posts. But, and this is key, he wasn't running some specific Kurdish national project, not at all. Saladin operated a totally cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic, pluralistic empire. His administration was deeply rooted in Sunni Islam and basically ran in Arabic. His whole success relied on building these massive coalitions among Arabs, Persians, Kurds, and Turkic peoples. So while he's an incredible Kurdish figure, his worldview and his empire were just vast and deeply baked into the broader Islamic world of that era.
Section 5. The Age of Emirates. So the crucial point here is what happens next, when local Kurdish governance really starts to flex its own muscles.
As the Ayyubid Empire eventually splintered, we enter an era where local Kurdish governance truly flourished in its own right. All across these rugged landscapes, this incredible patchwork of semi-autonomous Kurdish principalities popped up. We're talking major emirates like Bitlis, Botan, Mukrian, and Ardalan. And listen, these were not isolated backwaters. No way. They were vibrant, buzzing centers of power that managed to survive by playing a brilliant, if super precarious game of diplomacy and warfare. They constantly balanced themselves between massive expanding powers, like the Turkmen confederations, the rising Ottomans, and the Safavids. And under the relatively stable patronage of these Kurdish emirs, culture just blossomed. They sponsored scholars, built madrasas, and funded some of the most magnificent classical Kurdish literature, like the famous 16th century chronicle, the Shrafnama.
There is a quote about this that I absolutely love because it hits the nail on the head regarding their reality. It goes, "Neither entirely sovereign nor merely imperial functionaries, the Kurdish emirs found themselves constantly balancing between assertion of local interests and pragmatic accommodation." I mean, that right there, that is the absolute political genius of the era. Living in this wildly dangerous, constantly shifting borderland, these rulers had to adapt, negotiate, and sometimes fight, just to keep their autonomy and protect their people's way of life. It's a crazy balancing act.
But, nothing lasts forever. By the 16th and 17th centuries, the political weather was changing drastically. The Kurdish Emirates found themselves caught in this brutal imperial squeeze. You had the highly centralized Ottoman Empire pushing super aggressively from the west, and the powerful Safavid dynasty of Persia expanding hard from the east. When these two colossal empires finally clashed, they ended up drawing a hard, fortified frontier literally right through the absolute heart of the Kurdish lands. This geopolitical earthquake threatened to crush the centuries-old autonomy that these Kurdish principalities had fought so incredibly hard to build.
And that leaves us with a profound, lingering question to wrap up this explainer. How does a people survive when expanding empires draw a permanent frontier straight through the heart of their homeland? It's quite the cliffhanger, right? But it perfectly sets the stage for the modern era of Kurdish history, a time defined by divided borders, national awakenings, and this fierce, resilient struggle for cultural survival. I really hope this deep dive gave you a richer, much more nuanced look at the incredible history and enduring spirit of the Kurdish people. Thank you so much for hanging out and exploring this living mosaic with us. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.